What's up? We're in the next part. Please go check out the previous part to gauge your bearings. I have a speech lag. You know, these days I've just got so many problems with my phone, my devices, but it's okay. And so far as you hear the audio, that's all that matters. Go and check out the previous part to gauge your bearings, to understand what we're talking about. But I was speaking about bespoke items, or bespoke people, bespoke prayer items, things that are done or made specifically for you. You know, a bespoke item is unlike something that you walk into a store. 1 minute. It is unlike something that you walk, oh goodness, the speech lag. Anyway, it is unlike something that you walk into a store and just grab it and then pay the price and leave. Like going furniture shopping for something that's already made. A bespoke item, you order it in advance, they make it specifically for you, they tailor make it for you, and then you collect it later. The downside of a bespoke item is that it requires patience, it requires waiting. It basically inspires a person the character virtue of delayed gratification. You have to wait a little minute. And so if you insist on a bespoke item, you've also got to be a planner. You've got to go in advance. You've got to backtrack and forecast what you anticipate ought to be the final result. Tabulate it. Take the time to tabulate it, following which you will then present it as a petition to whoever will bring it forward to you. And also then be prepared to wait for it to ultimately come. And I spoke about how it is that Christians mess up a lot when it comes to their bespoke prayer items, because they allow themselves to settle for less than what they asked God for, because they think He cannot provide for them. That thing, given that hope deferred, makes the heart sick. When you've been waiting for a minute, you're languishing inside. But how it is that you can impress against waiting for your bespoke items is if you put in so much time in petitioning God that it will be a travesty for you to settle. It'll feel like a waste. It'll feel like studying at university up until 3rd year and then dropping out with just 1 module to graduate, which is what people try to do to me. If anything, they did do it to me. They try to make it look as if though I suddenly dropped out of university when I only had 1 module to graduate. Meanwhile, they sabotaged my whole entire everything future to a point where I could not finish even my degree. I was afflicted even at that level. It's another story for another day. Perhaps I might take time to explain it to you. That one, we can't labor, but there's no way that I, having spent all that money, all that time, and having had all that anticipation for graduation, that I would ever drop out of school at any time, especially not when I only have 1 module to graduate. So such travesties as those should motivate the waiter, the person who is waiting on the Lord, the patient one in this particular regard. It should motivate them to wait in spite of their sick heart. Their hearts should be, you know, spurned along unto encouragement by the fact that who gives up at this point, at such a latter stage? Allow the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in the beginning to demotivate you from like just settling. I nearly did that. So I was speaking about a list that I took to God, and therefore getting to that point, a list that I took to God about my husband, what I wanted for my future, right? Never mind my husband, but just the whole family set. It was my strongest desire. Family was my strongest desire. So a husband and children. That's how I knew deep down inside from a very early age, ever since I was just a child, I knew that my legacy would be built through family, not career, acquisition of material possessions, nothing. I knew from very early on that I had to have a thriving family. Now imagine your biggest desire just being pulled from underneath your feet like that. Out of my entire life, my greatest desires were to be exquisitely educated, to a point of, if I wanted to, lecturing, family, having loads of kids and a loving, doting husband with whom I'm going to stay married forever and ever, and a purpose that I would fulfill in acquiring wealth in this world, that I would work with my husband in order to get there. And I knew that if at all it was a family business, or a business between husband and wife, it would be easy for us to raise children without being absent, right? So corporate takes mothers away from children and fathers. It takes dads from soccer practices and soccer matches, and it takes moms pick kids up at school too late. It causes kids to get raised by nannies. And for me, it was like, if I'm running a family business with my husband, the two of us are running this organization, we can delegate and be at the children's matches and be that both of us can be there for the kids. If we run a business where we're not expected to clock into some 9 to 5, like it enables you to also to prioritize family. Plus, if it's a family business, you want to keep it in the family, and so you start training children in family crafts early. So your daughter or your son's first job, paperwork, being a little secretary, you know, typing up minutes for you in your business. Your bring a girl child to school day is bring a daughter to daddy's business, and your kid is known as an heir and is so therefore respected by the family. And your children, as soon as they get out of matric, they go to university, etc., and they intern at your organization. You give them a boost that way, and you give them an option to basically proliferate like a baton the company business. If they don't want to, if they want their own thing, if they want to work in corporate, let them go, let them fly, but they will always have a quick job through the family. I wanted to create that level of security, financial security for my children, to make sure that they never struggle with job interviews or struggling to get what do you call this, not struggling with like issues of discrimination, never mind racially, but just njefela, you know how, like, yeah, basically I wanted to give my kids the nepotistic favor that so many other children have in this world, whose families own businesses. You know, they get successful so young because of the fact that they were given a boost by their own dads and moms. I wanted to create that legacy, and so my kids were going to start getting trained from the age of like 10, the company business, the ways around. If they get bored and lazy at 10, we'll let them go and be kids, and then at 14 we'll try again, at 18 we'll try again, but at some point you got to be responsible and basically do what you need to do over here. It teaches children responsibility. It helps them avoid nightclubs. If you create a young, like, general manager, he's not going to be in the club the way that other 24-year-olds are in the club, right? Yeah, he's going to be running a business. So I felt like starting a family business would build character in children that you're raising up to basically take on the reins in the future. It builds character a lot better. It gives them something to work on. If you think about children of, like, as in really old, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd century, this nonsense that is proliferated in the 21st century, where kids are growing up in front of TV games, kids are growing up going to malls and just like loitering them, just wandering around like little vagrants, like just, yeah, like eating popcorn and playing games at the arcade is... If people of old would come and see how kids are growing up in the 21st century, they would be out of their minds with shock, because it's like you're wasting all that youthful energy. You're wasting all that youthful energy. Kids of old were already being trained crafts very young. Yes, no, not child labor, but child responsibility. Like kids' daughters, while they played with dolls and with each other, ring a roses, they also knew that we gotta help mom peel the carrots. We gotta help dad put the car together, or put the machinery, the farm thing together. And they also did not hang out around each other a lot, because there was so much distance between children of different families, because homes were so far apart from one another. So this communal hanging out with each other amidst each other thing was rare among children, and that helps because the Bible says that in the heart of a child dwells a lot of folly, but the rod of discipline drives it away from him. That's what the Bible says. So when then children are allowed to just hang out around each other for hours on end, copious amounts of time, without anybody giving them responsible chores and tasks, how much worse do things get in that ecosystem? If in the heart of a child dwells a great deal of folly, and they are around each other 12 hours a day, with adult supervision, making sure they don't at least hit each other, making sure they don't swear at each other or fight. Yes, like it, guys. Well, kids don't have to swear, they don't have to fight, they don't have to bully in order to be essentially just like put in a cesspool of destruction. I will tell you what I used to talk about with my girls when I was in primary school at just the age of 11, 12. We used to talk about kissing boys. When we think it's okay to break our virginity, have sex. and gossiping the crushes that we had, and also who it is that has a crush on who and what they were doing, who we busted kissing in the school playground. What the heck? Like, we're 11 and those were our conversations. That's what us spending all day together did. That's what it did. So we were not slapping each other, scratching each other. If a teacher saw us chilling during lunch like that, having that discussion, she would think, oh, peaceful children. But no, ain't no peace up in that monster. Those kids are talking rubbish. They're experimenting and nobody's brittling it. Nobody is yeah, you get my point. That's what's good. Yeah, so if at all a kid is like how much time they spend with other children is limited, you enable that kid far better than you can ever enable any other child. And there's no better way to train a child to be less futile in the way that he or she thinks than to give them a purpose very young, to give them a purpose early on, and to reward it. In other words, essentially pay your child, make your child's allowance a salary. In that, if you help me, daddy, on this particular chore, if you help daddy with these paperworks for 4 weekends in a row, consistently, I will buy you that very expensive bicycle. I will buy you that, like, reward them, like a whole system of rewards and punishment, so that the child will see the lack of a virtue, no value of just hanging out, playing, like, what is this, giggling and rolling around on a bed and then talking about the girl next door that you have a crush on with like 10 other boys in the neighborhood. For them to see far greater value in him working for that bicycle instead of just hanging out with a bunch of rando other children with whom they're going to speak smack all the time along. For your kid to actively make a decision to pass up on those play dates and rather choose to learn the craft, the business that is dad's, because the end reward is so much loftier. But you're not forcing the child to stay with you and typing up minutes for a meeting as you're like correcting their grammar. You're not forcing them to stay. They can go play, but if they go play, you're not going to buy them the bicycle. Not yet. You'll buy them the bicycle for Christmas because you got to buy them something for Christmas, but they're not going to get it in June. They're not going to get it in February. So you teach them how to bring in goalposts and how to take out goalposts. You teach them how to fast track acquisition, how to save, how to choose wisely what you do with your time, that you might acquire more and more. A kid like that will therefore not have regret for not having spent more time with other children. They will rather have gained business skills young, just like kids of old. No forcefulness, no coercion. If they want to go and play on the school playground and waste time, let them go. However, give them a great incentive to rather choose to learn from you. Then on that day, you basically drive out the rod of discipline out of this child, don't you? Not drive out the rod of discipline, sorry, but the folly. You drive out folly. So I understood these things early on. When I came to Christ, really they were quite inspired by the scriptures. And so I wanted a man with whom we were going to both build a legacy through family, like building and making a big chunky family, and also running a business. I wanted a whole creche of children, like lots of kids, so as to also minimize my kids' loneliness. Because the thing that makes children hang out around each other is the fact that at home they only have like 2 siblings. They only have 1 sibling. Do you understand? So I wanted like a whole yard of children, like almost like 101 Dalmatians, but instead of it being Dalmatians, it's kids, so that they would all be each other's friends, and seeing as their voice of instruction would come from one source, us, we can then control the narrative of what is feasible to talk about. Whereas you don't know what parents are telling their kids, you don't know what they're teaching their kids, how loose cannons they are. They are children whose parents allow them to smoke, for crying out loud. There are children who speak to their parents using profanity, and parents don't see anything wrong with that. I remember how shocked I was, out of my mind, when the first time I watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians, how it is that and her sisters could easily call Chris a B word. Mom, why are you being such a B? I was like, whoa. You know, basically, Kris Jenner allowed her daughters to talk to her like that. But that would never be found in my household. Never mind my household, but none of that rubbish flies in the black community. Like, it doesn't. Like, there's certain ways to speak to your kids. So when kids are used to where it is that older sister, 17-year-old sister can call their mama B, and you as an 11-year-old sister, younger sister, observes this, and the mother is not lamenting about the language of the sister, but rather is saying, but why do you say that I'm acting like a bee? What have I done? Instead of the mother having a field day rolling on the floor with an epileptic fit, that the daughter used that kind of language She's rather asking, but what have I done? Like, there are proper parents who have no rod of discipline, no libanda. They're so accommodating, so loose in what their kids can do that you never know which of the children, all of these innocent looking beautiful kids on the school playground are like the Kardashians. You never know which of them come from a household where the mother will not take that level of language versus where the mother is like literally acting as if that's normal language to speak to your parents concerning. So because you don't know what these kids are exposed to, who is their source of authority, what is the source of their training and instruction, you can control it if at all these children in your household having been bred from your own belly. And mind you, I did not only want children from my own belly, I was gonna adopt. They all have got one teaching voice, one instructing voice, and that voice will not take the use of a certain word in the ecosystem. It's not gonna fly. So your own children are best to influence each other because they have got a unitary, unique figure of authority that has got one set of rules, and they all are under those set of rules. And so if you create a lot of them and adopt a lot more, you make them hang out. They become the school, they become the playground, and again they are under the same mom, the same dad, who are running a business, and everybody's got to pull up their weight. And young kids look up to their older brothers and sisters. So if the older brothers and sisters are nicely catching on to moms and dads business acumen, this little boy is then going to mirror he's going to mirror his sister. You know, the little girl is going to mirror the little girl is going to mirror her sister and brother, who have already just kind of, you know, caught on. You look up to your older sibling. I would know. I used to absolutely admire my older sister. And so I wanted to be her. I wanted to be her. She was such an academic. She was so like strong-willed. She was so successful, so young that my little sister, like I used to like flex with my little older. I used to flex with my older sister. I used to tell everybody, oh, my sister's studying in Italy. My sister is this, my that. My sister, like I was on that. Yeah, you know, when you have got an older sibling in a household that is just killing it, it is a massive inspiration to babies around, the young ones that are growing up. They look up to this big brother, they look up to this big sister. And so if you successfully rear up the older siblings, they will raise automatically by emulation or mirroring the younger ones. And so you just have this beautiful army of lovely children, and they're just like self-raising, like some dough that you find at the supermarket. They're self-raising without baking powder, and that's how you feel proud of building a legacy. I wanted a family. That's what I'm trying to explain. I wanted family. I wanted family, and I wanted family that is also intertwined with purpose, and my life's work would be ensconced by family. It would be rooted in family. So because I am so smart, because I'm so gifted intellectually, I knew that it was not a far cry for me to ultimately start a business. But I did not want to have a business before I had a husband, because I also understood how men can be when women are too strong and too intimidating, I guess to a certain extent intimidating. I knew how men also struggle to pursue when a woman is too strong. Do you understand? And also there comes qualms with territory, never mind territory, but claims. By claims I mean, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. When you found me, I was doing this. I wanted to build a business with my husband instead of him coming to join my business when we get married, or me joining his. I wanted us to start it together. So there is no claim to what under heaven it is that belongs to who. And I also did not want to, in and of myself, have a strong established business by the time that he came into the picture to pursue me, because it would be very hard to intertwine our purposes in this particular regard, due to the fact that, especially when the woman is financially very strong and economically just kind of like thriving some enterprise in the country, it gets really hard for the dude to be prepared to essentially be boosted and start his own thing because the woman already had a thing going. There will be arguments later on, but if you start it together, everybody knows that they're an equal partner in this, and their investment, this particular union, will always be egalitarian. It'll always be a family business and not so much mom's business that dad helped along with, or dad's business that mom helped along with. It's our business. It's our unique idea. So I gathered expertise and I gathered strength. I gathered training and instruction by working in corporate South Africa. But I had a thorough understanding that once I get married, I will not thorough understand. Let me rather say I had a longing, a desire. Okay, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. I had a longing and a desire to never go back to work after my wedding day. That my last day on the job at whatever company I worked for would be essentially the week before my wedding day. I would work until that date, because after I am a married woman, I am going to start something with my husband. Like, that's it. I was not going to stay in corporate South Africa, because I had these lofty ambitions. I had dreams for family, and I've always wanted to be a better mom than my own mom, and I also wanted to be a better mom than the moms I observed around me in corporate South Africa. There was one woman at the company where I was working that MTN used to give 6 months maternity leave. This woman was so much of a workaholic that she came back after 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I was like, I'm tired, you don't love your child. You are in love with your career. And I also witnessed enough women that I knew in the business that went on maternity leave for that 6 months, and it was just such a drag to come back. It was so hard for them to adjust, and they were so sad. Like, something about them had changed. They had gotten time to bond with the baby, and now they had to be in this place. So all of a sudden there was a dryness to them. They were no longer what they were prior to pregnancy, because something was missing. They were detached. It was like a ripping away from something that they had started that was supposed to just continue happening, but they had to go back to work, and so they broke away from the baby. When you were with this baby every single waking moment, you shopped with this baby, pushing its pram in the mall for 6 months, and then you come back, and now a domestic worker, a nanny, is the one pushing that trolley, buying your baby formula, is the one that is taking care of your child. Yeah, no, I saw it really. I saw it shatter women that for them try to make it work. They try to make it look like it was okay. They tried to, push, be cool and whatnot, but they were changed women. They were different. It's not supposed to happen that way. Babies are not supposed to be ripped from their moms, ripped from their mothers. So upon making that observation, I took it to the Lord God on high, and I was like, Father on high, hello there. Absolutely awesome to be a daughter now. It would be really great if I did not have to be ripped away from my children. I wanted to be there for kids. I wanted to enjoy motherhood. I have been so broody for so long, and I especially just so longed to dress up a baby girl. The first desire was for a baby girl. Later on I was like, fine, I'll take boys. Why? Because I'm a girly girl and I love to dress stuff up. I wanted to get my kid looking so cute. I was gonna match with my daughter. Like, everywhere we went, if I'm wearing a pink tracksuit, my daughter was gonna wear a pink tracksuit. I was going to make my daughter look like me. Even if the baby is in like a grower, and for the day I'm wearing like a blue outfit, and my baby messes up her pants or whatever with poop, because for whatever reason, unalik diarrhea, unfortunate soul. Yeah, I was going to change the baby all day long into new growers that are all also blue. I was gonna match with my baby girl. She was gonna wear the same dress I was wearing at the mall. I just had those dreams up until a certain age, of course. The kid might one day be like, Mom, you're not my twin. Like, please, can I please wear that and you wear something else? Okay, on the day when my kid then teases me, maybe it will change. But I wanted my baby girl to be just another me. I was gonna do her hair like me. Her hair was gonna get messed up faster than mine, of course, but that was what I wanted. I was gonna go to the gym with my little girl, and she was gonna carry a small little dumbbell while I was carrying a big one. That was, yeah, and so for me to go to the gym with my little girl means that I'm leaving the house at 11 or 12 a.m. p.m. basically in the middle of the afternoon, to go to the gymnasium, because I can't go to the gym in the middle of the day with my daughter, because I'm spending time with my daughter. When I go to the store, or when I don't have to worry, I don't have to rush back home in traffic wondering what's going on with my child, because my child is with me in traffic. My child is with me. My daughter has got gym membership just like me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I was gonna go everywhere with this human being, like everywhere. And I was so content with that. And then it was going to be 2 human beings, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5 human beings, and then 6 and 7, and then it was just going to keep growing and growing, and they were all going to go everywhere with me. Maybe somewhere along the way I would stop dressing them like me, but bottom line is I just had like this whole dream of how I'm gonna deal with my firstborn girl. I wanted my first child to be a girl because I was so thirsty and hungry for a girl. First, for the reasons that I'm such a girly girl and I wanted to make it pretty. I wanted to make her pretty. Type establishment thing. Yeah, so given my desires for mothering, parenting, motherhood, I was never gonna get that right. And the jealousy that I would have felt for the closeness that my daughter or son has with the nanny, it was gonna eat me alive for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. While I would absolutely hire help to enable me to not basically have to suffer alone with raising children, I would have had a live-in of sorts. I would have been there with her. I would have been basically there to train and overlook the affairs of the household, being the madam lady, old, you know, person that's running the show, and the domestic, not the domestic worker, but the nanny, albeit living with us and sleeping in the same house and everything, always be known as nanny by my kids. You know, number 2 that the kids want to run to instead of me. The milestones that women in corporate missed, like the first words of children, are caught by nannies, and the first footsteps are caught by nannies, and it's just like they're not there. And for me it was like, yo, if I miss my child's first words, it'll only be because of the fact that I have asked my husband to wait while I run to the other aisle at the grocery store to go and fetch something that I need quickly. Can he please just wait for me there with our daughter? And then when I'm gone, the daughter's like, Baba, or hello, and my husband is like, yo, she spoke. Then I feel like, what did I miss? My goodness, like the kid's first word. But it was by happenstance, by mistake. It's not because I was at work all day. I was rather running to go and fetch Jik at the Pick and Pay, and by the time I came back, this kid decided to speak while I was gone. That is how I would miss certain milestones. Or maybe like Papa, I'm saying, yeah, not because all day long I'm gone and the nanny's like, mama, I walked namhlanje. Yeah, okay, thanks for letting me know. I would be very jealous over my nanny's closeness to my kid. I would be absolutely entirely, like 100% frustratedly of her, because she would be experiencing all the milestones that I as a mother ought be experiencing, but I'm not there. So I knew from very early that I knew as soon as I knew even before I came to Christ that whatever's going on in corporate, I'm really gonna struggle with it. I knew that my career was gonna grow, but I did not know how to reconcile what I wanted to do in light of family with the fact that I was this academic, I was studying, I was growing. I was gonna ultimately become important for some organization, so important that I'm gonna be needed very many hours a day. But how in the world do you reconcile your maternal instinct, the strong desire for family, the strong desire for career? How do you reconcile them? Because being intelligent and being ambitious has meant for me that I have always wanted a career. That much is true. Wanted also, all in one. I was conflicted. I wanted to be there for children, but I also wanted a very successful career. And I took that to God in prayer. And what came back to me in the spirit as what was right in the sight of God was to basically have a family business. Because then in that way, you're there for the kids. You don't even take leave. It's your business. You just decide to go to the doctor. That's it. The amount of times that I fell sick when I was a kid, that I had to take my mom out of work, was so many. And for me, it's like, if my kid is sick, they're going to a doctor right now, and not by a nanny. The number of times that I was taken to a doctor vomiting by a nanny was more than I was comfortably able to count. And when you are that sick as a child, nanny, fine, you're cool, you know, like, yeah, it's all good in the hood. But it would be really great if my mom was here. I remember one time I was taken to the clinic because I was very, very sick, and the nanny took me there, and we had to walk to the clinic, right? And I was a small enough child to be carried, but the trip to the clinic was so long, and it was in the sun, that it became exasperating for the helper to carry me, right? But my mom did not at the time yet have a car, but my dad did. And even though my dad was and my mom were on shaky terms. They were always fighting. If anything, I think they might have already divorced. At times like these, that's when a child really needs you. The fact that I had to walk that sick, basically vomiting every so often, the nanny carrying me, and then having to put me down because she was exasperated, that was just like, it was too much. And it was, never mind a trip walking to the clinic, but it was also a trip walking back, and I was sick. Like, stuff like that. For me, it was like, you know, when you think back, when you reminisce about such things as those that happened when you were a child, you realize the troubles, the issues of working mothers. My mom was a working mom. She was at work all day long. I had been sick since the night before, and she gave the nanny money to take me to the clinic. And yeah, all she could do was, I guess, call in and find out how the kid is doing. But I had to walk, and the nanny did not have a car. And the clinic was in a direction where there was no taxi route. We could only walk. That's what I'm trying to explain. We could only walk. And it felt like, yes, like it, guys, the great trek. Do you understand? It felt like the great trek. These are the kinds of things that I don't want my children to ever have to experience. I don't want any sick child of mine walking in the sun with anybody other than me. There is something so healing and so comforting about your mother being there when you're at the doctor's office instead of just a nanny. Yeah, and again, you don't want your children loving your nanny more than you. You don't want your kids running towards a nanny instead of you. You don't want your kids asking a nanny for anything that they should be asking you for. Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to be there for my kids, but I also wanted a career, and the best way to do that is to have your own business. So I sought the Lord's face for a man that would, in and of himself, have gathered skills and expertise wherever he's at. I would have gathered skills and expertise in corporate, and the two of us were going to put our heads together and start a business. Whatever that business would have been. I knew that I did not want to... when I came to Christ, I gained stronger conviction about being at home to raise children. But I also knew that there's no way under heaven that I could live out the rest of my life without using my mind. Without in an economic capacity. Never mind just in terms of, you know, matters of the household. I wanted to use my mind in an economic capacity. In other words, in a business capacity. In acquiring wealth instead of just being a mom. I know that there is a lot of honor and homage that ought be paid to stay-at-home moms that don't run businesses. But I knew that personally, I needed to use my mind. Because I have a thing about feeling a sense of achievement. So I needed to run a business. A successful business using my skills. I had to do that. There's no way I couldn't. And when I read about the Proverbs 31 woman, it is written of her that she considers a field and she buys it. So she's an entrepreneur to a certain extent. She's an investor. She is a woman that speculates the market and makes a decision. That is business. And I knew, therefore, that God also has great regard for a woman that wants to run a business, to consider a field and to buy it. She also makes coverings for her children. Nobody has any want in her household. Everybody loves and trusts her, including her maidens. In other words, the people who are her helpers, essentially the domestic worker, they are the maidens that she takes care of, the ones that she prepares coverings for, the ones that she makes food for. She is the madam lady of the house. But she's also a businesswoman. I wanted that lady. I wanted to be her through and through. Like, everything about her was just the perfect fit. I got answered prayer without even praying. My desires of old, the desires that I have had since I was a kid, now all of a sudden came nicely packed in Proverbs 31. I got confirmed to that a woman must be, I guess, the wind beneath the wings of her man, a helper suitable, but she also gets to be a career, and she is the runner of the household. She is the lead of her household maidens, and not so much the absent dictator that has delegated her mothering to another person. She is not an absent sovereign that has delegated her power to another woman. She is a present headmistress. Do you understand? She is a present mama hen over maidens, over men, over women, men and women, people who work for the household. She is their governor, but not from an absent capacity. She's very present. She's a servant leader, just like Jesus. She is a servant leader. She is there to run a household of people that work for her, but in a very serving capacity, just like the Proverbs 31 woman. So she does make food for everybody. Like a household where the children don't know mommy's cooking is unacceptable. So I can never have a live-in chef or a cook, because I want my kids to know my food, and I want them to remember the smell of it, the signature scents of how I cook. So I don't want a helper cooking. My mom wasn't even like that. We had a living domestic worker when I was growing up because my little sister was newly born. We needed help, right? My mom never, not even once, do you understand, did she ever let the domestic worker cook? Because my mom liked her own food. She wanted everybody to eat dijo tsa yena di phegileng. And well, that's the one thing that I inherited from my mom. I insist that my husband eats food that I cook. I insist that my kids eat food that I cook. I would never hire a cook. I would never let another woman cook our food. I would never, ever. Like, even if I was super wealthy, I would never hire a chef because I want my own baked goods. I have a thing about pastries. Pastries, right? Baking. I want my kids to understand my pastries. And so too does my husband's stomach understand my pastries. And so too do the servants or the maids, the people who work for us also. I like, yo, mama, yeah, she knows her way around the dombolo. I want everybody to love my cooking. I'm like my mom that way. My mom prides herself in how excellent a cook she is, to a point where she won't let even my younger sister and I touch the stove. She won't let any of us touch it. Like, whenever I would cook, she'd be like, hi, how I can shock on what? My boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend used to like my food. What are you talking about? That's your taste buds. But I do love my mom's food. That's the thing. And she is so good at doing it that I can see why she is so like, you know, bossy over the stove. Like, she's, even as she's gotten older and exhausted, tired, as in there is just so much like less energy in her bones, she will still stand for hours in front of the stove because she just loves the look of satisfaction in everybody's eyes when they're chewing and nobody's talking because everybody's eating. That's what I wanted. And the Proverbs 31 lady is like that. She considers a field and she buys it. She prepares portions for her maidens and her children and her husband. She makes coverings for them. She clothes them. She clothes her children. Her husband has full confidence in her. He goes to the city gates. I read that. I asked the Lord to make me like the Proverbs 31 lady, and I asked the Lord to make it possible for me to be her. Possible for me to be her. And I saw that if I stayed in corporate, I would never be that girl. I would never ever get to a point where I am the mother that I want to be. I will never get to the point where I am the head mistress of a household, or the head, yeah, you get my point, like the head mistress that runs maids. I would never get to a point. I've got helpers underneath me. See me as, like, you know, just such a loving employer. I would never get there because there's no way that I would never have not envied a woman that is better with my kids than me. Like, it was just never, like, yeah, I'd be very jealous for my children that way. And given that, I then asked the Lord for this particular thing. As for what the business would be, I did not know. So because I did not know what the business would be, I sought the Lord's face to give me what do you call this, to give me a career that I would love. I literally never knew what I wanted to do with my life, all the way up until I became a Christian and I gained passion. Been able to do various things, touching them here and there all throughout my life, but never did I ever have a solid conviction about what I wanted to do. The only thing that I have ever truly loved with a deep might was biology and the human anatomy and all things human care. But I was so squeamish and so scared of blood averse, that I could never do medicine. So essentially the one craft, the one thing that drew me as a child, I could never do it because of my thing with death. But I've always wanted to take care of people in a medical capacity to a certain extent. And never mind medical, but just to pamper souls, like to love people and be really good at loving them also is aligned to their anatomy. So, I mean, really, when you're that chick, what in the world do you do when you can't stand blood? What do you do? You can't do medicine. You can't, like, yeah, I was like, my hands were just tied. And it was coming to Jesus that finally gave me a passion, right? Because then I could deal with caring for people and their proverbial blood situation or their proverbial souls without actually having to deal with blood. I became a Christian and that became my passion. But I knew that I could not, for the life of me, make a career out of Christianity. It could never happen. I developed a passion for this new thing, and now that I was able to love it, I then started to basically start up something in light of Christ as a side, not a hustle, a side thing, a hobby, that now today is what it is that I'm doing, my ministry, right? I started to write poetry. I loved it. I started to, when I was in Christ, I now felt like I was a healer. I was a doctor to a certain extent to people's souls. I had a way of talking into their souls. I had a way of, you know, not offending people when I gave them the gospel. I had a way around evangelism. I had a way to explain things to people so that they could see why they needed God. I was essentially like a born apologist, if you know what I'm saying. I'm a good diagnostist. Yeah, I'm good with diagnostics. I know how to diagnose a root cause, if you know what I mean, of a person's rebellion against God. So if I was a doctor, I would be a what do you call what do they call them? Doctors that are really good with diagnostics. They are called pathologists. Thank you God. He brought it to me. Yes, I am a spiritual pathologist, right? It's called a pathology. That is my specialty. I am good with diagnostics. I can diagnose. I can find root causes for people's rebellion against Jesus, why people can't stand the gospel, why they're so rebellious against it. I became good with that. I started to identify root causes of people's rebellion against God and speak life into them when they appeared so far gone. I realized I was able to reach unreachable people just by getting to the root cause of why they can't even stand God. Yeah, so I'm like a spiritual pathologist that way, right? Pathology is my specialty in this like triage center that is the gospel, right? Yeah, but how in the world under heaven do I then convert? How do I find a career? I went to the Lord and I was like, Father, never in my life have I ever had passion for anything except that which I can't do because I can't stand blood. And now that it's clear that I'm never going to be able to study medicine, I'm never going to go to school and do biochemistry, none of that. I'm never going to end up there. I was forced into corporate commerce, right? I could not finish law. I tried to do law, but then because I had to drop out of school due to my mom not paying my school fees and take myself back, Wits Plus, which is the part-time version of my university, did not offer law part-time, so I had to drop law. Law was the closest thing to medicine where I could help people type thing. I was going to do constitutional law, human rights law, basically fighting for people's human rights. So it's a sort of a doctor, right? I couldn't do that, so here is I was studying like entrepreneurship, I was studying finance, statistics. I was doing all these things that frankly just were not calling my name. They were not calling my name. They were not calling my name, and I got really frustrated by that. Even with project management, I wasn't entirely satisfied. I wasn't happy, type thing. But so because of that, I was like, God, I don't know what in the world. I want a career that's gonna feel like I'm not working. There is this saying in the world that do what you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. I was like, Father, make that true. I want to do what I love so I never have to work a day in my life, so I can invest so much of myself in it without getting any reward for it. Even when it is unrewarded, I will still push because it's my passion. It's my love. Like, have you seen how doctors can work for very little reward all day just pushing? Like, if you think about the doctors right now in what do you call this, not Palestine, in the Gaza Strip, how it is that there's no electricity right now with the war with Israel, and for me they are shining torches like in hospitals that have no electricity, and all I could think was, it takes a lot of passion to not throw in the towel as a person like that. You're a doctor, you could go and work anywhere, right? And yet you're in a hospital. There is a calling for professions like those, such that you would indeed operate on people with limited resources using a torchlight, because it's your calling. It is something that you would work for even without reward. Like, if you also think about Doctors Without Borders, these doctors that go to these remote locations and live there under these like hard conditions, when they have been accustomed to living in luxury where they come from originally, and then they put themselves in the center of some isolated part of Africa for 5 years, and it's like, yo, whoa, oh, strong. That's a calling. Like, when you can work like a dog with little reward, it's a calling. And there is nothing I've ever been able to do more like such doctors than this work, the work of the Lord. Wait, with no reward, you're working like a dog. And I asked God to give me that kind of passion in a craft that would earn me a salary, because I knew that I could not monetize ministry, right? Thank you for giving me this passion, but it was through my passion for Jesus that I then developed other skills that I finally got to learn I actually love. So there are things I never would have studied and therefore developed a passion for, if at all I wasn't thrown into persecution. I told you that I've always loved anatomy, and I have always loved helping people. I've always loved all things that have to do with the body and healing the body and all that jazz. But without having to touch blood, don't get to me with blood. You know what I mean? I'm squeamish that way. I can't gaze upon a cadaver and be okay. I struggle to see human suffering. I really struggle to see human suffering, so I would never have made for a good doctor. I was too sensitive. I would have dropped out of med school in second year, because I think that's when they cut cadavers. Yeah, that's what's good. And if anything, my dad also did drop out of med school, by the way, in second year because of cadavers. So I guess I was like my dad that way, and he ended up doing law instead of medicine. He started out with medicine, so I'm the exact same thing that my dad was, right? Type of person to drop out of med school because can't deal. Yeah. Anyway, so persecution, losing everything, losing absolutely everything, put me in a position to take care of myself with nothing left to me. So I continue to work for the Lord because, like I said, with no reward, this is something I'm never going to stop doing. I have been given a passion for Christ that exceeds human understanding. I am working just like those doctors in Gaza with with flashlights when there's no electricity. I'm still operating in a hospital that likely smells of blood that is coagulating because of the fact that there's limited sanitation given the resource scarcity that we're dealing with because of the crisis at hand. And yet we are gonna push because we gotta try and see who in the world we're gonna save, who we're gonna operate on. We're gonna push, we're gonna innovate a way around this. So I'm working like that right now when it comes to ministry. So it is irrelevant that I'm not going anywhere, that I'm shadow banned, that YouTube is wreaking havoc in my life. I don't care, but I am trying to make money in other regards. So this is where I asked the Lord for passion. I asked God to basically be a lamp to my feet, to show me how I can make money. How can I basically thrive a career that's not going to feel like ngiyasebenza. It's not going to feel like a chore. I'm not going to feel like I'm working. If I was not thrown into persecution, I would not have had time to trial and error experiment to survive my sorrow. I would not have developed certain things that are now today potential streams of income in the future that I have identified and that I love so much that no one would ever make me feel like ngiyasebenza apha. I'm working. Do you understand? Because it is something that I love so much. However, thank God it's lucrative. It's paid. Thank God it is what is this? Gainful, employment, and it's not the onerous chore that I used to feel I was partaking in when I was a project manager at MTN. I was making some pretty decent money, but I was just, like I said, it was an onerous chore. I wasn't happy. I told you guys that diagnostics is my thing. Pathology is my thing. I diagnose. Do you understand? Came to learn when I was working, before I lost everything. Before I lost everything, I'd already prayed, God, give me a passion, right? Give me a passion. So help me know where to go. I understand that project management, you've put me in it because through it you can branch out into many other careers, right? You're not going to be forced on one particular career path. If you've done project management for many years, you can literally hop into anything else, okay? So I knew that I was in the right place, even though I did not like that particular job. I wanted to be a subject matter expertise. I am good at diagnostics. I am good at root cause analysis. In whatever field, and in whatever field I am in, I am good at root cause analysis. So diagnostics, that's me, okay? When I was working at MTN, there were these auditors that came to the company when we were going through a little bit of a rough patch situation with innovation. And these people were into insights gathering and then creating a business, not a business case, but a recommendation for what would be the next steps for the organization given these that we have gathered. Those guys were consultants for Deloitte. It was Deloitte, right? And whenever they would present their findings, basically brief us on what they're doing, I would sit there in awe at their jobs and be like, this is it. This is it. I want to do what this guy is doing. This is it. This is it. I want to do what this guy is doing. And so I started researching consultants, but of course, if you research that one word, consultants, you're gonna come across so many things, so many things are gonna be all up in your grill. Okay, so I eventually just kind of let it go, but I knew that I wanted not so much to be an auditor, but some kind of a consultant that does diagnostics for issues in an organization. and give them insights and therefore recommendations as to how to fix a situation. I later came to learn that they're called management consultants. Okay, and so I basically wanted to become that. Like, yeah, I didn't even know how in the world I was gonna crack through. I tried to apply at McKinsey. I tried, yeah, wada fish paste, etc. But before I could even really truly investigate that career path and hopping on over to it, I then lost everything. So my management consultant aspirations were thrown out the window and the door to crash and burn by some nefarious human individuals. Yeah, whatever. They killed my management consulting career, but despite having killed my management consulting career, the Lord went on right ahead to continue to train me up in that particular management consulting space, but to broaden it. Yours, Karabo, is a diagnostic flair. You like to identify issues, and then upon finding the root causes of things, come up with insights, the insights of which from which you would then build recommendations, the recommendations of which can flip an entire organization. When then an organization is en route embracing your particular ideas for, what do you call this, transformation, that's when then the company would need to go and get change managers and what have you, type establishment thing. So essentially I was going to grow and grow, gain my skills, meet a man I imagined, right, that would be similar to me and have similar background educationally, and also similar desires, right, similar career aspirations, and also have a passion for diagnostics. In other words, root cause analysis, like studying an ecosystem and flipping companies, helping them survive the brink of death. Yeah, rescue organizations from near-death experiences. Rescue companies from near-death experiences. Organizations that were done, dead, obliterated. It was finished. It's near on liquidation now. How about we just close the doors and lock up, throw away the key. Don't even sell it because it is that valueless. But bring such organizations back from the brink of death. I imagined that what I would start with would be a consultancy of that nature. Management consultancy in the business of resuscitating dying organizations, or organizations that needed to improve. Never mind processes, but you get my point. Their whole modus operandi, their whole maybe value proposition, but their core competency, investigate if it is still relevant, all that jazz, blah blah. That's what I imagined I was going to ultimately do. I started to spot, I started to notice, I started to identify that, what do you call this, that's what I wanted. But then the moment I finally found out what I needed to do in terms of a career, and therefore now work towards it, I lost everything. So my whole management consulting career was stopped dead in its tracks. I was going to work really hard to become a management consultant, following which I was going to break away from being a consultant for a management consulting firm like Deloitte, like what is this, McKinsey, like IQ Business. I was going to break away from any such organization that I would have ended up working for, and then start my own thing. I was gonna build rapport, and then upon having enough clout and all my qualifications in a bag, go out on a limb and see if somebody will hire me, and see if somebody will take on my consultancy skills. Yeah, well, that was the rug was pulled from under my feet, but God made me see management consulting, because what I am doing now is a form of management consulting. I am still a diagnosticist, a pathologist. I am still what do you call this? I am still finding root causes in just about everything I touch. So the Lord made me realize that if you had stayed in corporate South Africa, you would have been narrow. You would have been limited or restricted to management consulting within, I guess, the e-commerce space. Not e-commerce, just commerce, the commercial space, the economic space. On that day, you would have neglected or abandoned your passion for biology, for the human form, for the human anatomy, how the body works, how it functions, how it can, you know, be improved. That would have flowed. You would not have had time to interrogate that. You would have only looked at just the commercial economic space. That's it. Basically, commerce. You would have only looked within commerce. You would never have looked in the health and fitness and how you can be somewhat management consultee there. You would never have looked into the skin space, how you could be that way. You would never have looked into the hair space and seen. I wanted to broaden your horizons. I wanted you to see that you're falling in love with diagnostics as you saw it in those consultants, Bako Deloitte, Go MTN, was me showing you that yours is a gift that I've given you to essentially diagnose an issue from the core in whatever space it's in, and the passions I have given you aligned to them are then going to be how I'm going to enable you to make money. Then on that day you will do what you love and never have to work a day in your life. I never wanted you to work one single career. I wanted you to be broad. I wanted you to be broad. So he ripped me out of corporate, and upon ripping me out of corporate, because I am such a researcher and so experimental and such a survivor as well, right? The survival that God of which had to instill in me, because otherwise absent of it I would have suffered like massively. All right, there was a time when I was hungry, like I was basically running I've always loved pastries, right? I'm that girl, like proper. I used to have cake every day. I don't need, like, we're going to talk about that eventually. I'm currently skipping exercise because this conversation is too strong and lofty. I used to love carrot cake like no man's business. Like, yeah, and I could afford to indulge because my metabolism was out of this world on fire. And we're going to get to talking about that in a minute. Yeah, well, my sweet tooth, that never really left me ever. Still to this day have an challenge with a sweet tooth. I loved pastries from very early, but what is this, when I was thrown all of a sudden into squalor, like I was starting, like money was running low, I had to find a way to not starve to death. I had to find a way to not starve to death, for crying out loud. I could not buy groceries the way that I used to buy them. Just, you know, buy bread, buy eggs. Okay, I never was a fan of eggs. Buy bread, buy chicken packs, buy this, buy that. I could no longer buy groceries based on what I needed. I had to start learning how to make things from scratch so as to save money. What in the world? Like, people done put me through a lot. So I learned how to bake. Because of suffering, I realized that instead of purchasing bread, I'm gonna buy a whole bag of flour and make my own bread. Because a little goes a long way. If you can make your own loaf of bread, if you can make your own carrot cake and so have dessert every night, if you can make your own chocolate cake and so have dessert every night, if you can make your own croissant and so have a breakfast every morning, then on that day you don't have to buy croissants at the bakery. You don't have to buy cake at the bakery. You also don't have to buy a loaf of bread at the bakery. You do not have to buy at the store. You don't have to buy, you get my point. All you need to buy, a big bag of flour, a big tray of eggs, baking powder, egg in bulk, blah blah, all those things, and make the stuff. Essentially just bake. Like, make your own bread, make your own croissants, make your own chocolate, make your own prepare your puff pastry, put it in the refrigerator, spread your chicken a lot longer by, instead of insisting every single night on having a meal with 3 pieces of chicken or 2 pieces of chicken, make a pizza that you will eat over 2 nights, that you're going to chop up 2 or 3 chicken breasts at a maximum over those 2 nights, instead of eating all of those 2 or 3 chicken breasts in one meal. And so you're going to spread out your pack of chicken a lot further. You're going to, I had to learn how to basically be a chef. I had to learn how to be a baker, a cook, a pastry chef. So the first thing I ever baked successfully were so many chocolate cupcakes that I had to give literally almost like a bucket to the security guards and some other dude that helped me bring some furniture upstairs to my apartment. Not furniture, but something heavy that I had purchased. This guy, I then gave him a bucket. I told him to bring back my casseroles. He did not. He basically fled with my casseroles. Goodness gracious, whatever. Good riddance. But like, I gave that guy because I had overestimated my portions. I did not yet know how to measure properly and all that jazz. So I made too much, and I was just one woman living by myself. So I gave away a whole bunch of my stuff, and they came out alright. They came out pretty good. I was surprised. How did I learn? I watched tutorials on YouTube. So I survived my sorrow, my squalor, my destitution, and my dwindling finances by spreading out a little bit of money a very long way. I taught myself how to bake because of sorrow, and I got so good at it that my baked goods essentially became the rave of the town. Whenever I would start sharing them with my family, like my cousin, my little sister had like a best friend cousin, they're no longer, they're estranged now, etc. He was a massive fan of my baked goods, right? I would make little peanut, what do you call this thing, brittle. I taught myself quite a lot, and I still wanted to experiment more, but money was an issue. In other words, I wanted to learn how to, I once watched a tutorial on YouTube of how to make cheesecake, and I've been meaning to experiment with making cheesecake, but I've just not had the resources and the money. So by now I don't know how far I would be in my baking craft. I really don't know how far I would be, if at all I had resources. But I definitely knew that when I finally get my own apartment where I've got my own kitchen, I am 100% starting a pastry channel on YouTube. I am going to start a baking channel on YouTube. I am going to start, it is like not even like, it's something that I can't start because I don't yet have my own kitchen. I don't have my own oven. So essentially the Lord gave me a stream of future income from something that I never would have known I am passionate about if I was not thrown in sorrow and so have to experiment with it. And upon it working out so well for me, I then developed a passion. So God knew what He fashioned me to be. I did not know what He fashioned me to be. And so He put me in sorrow in order to enable certain of my talents to come out. In order to enable certain of my gifts to come out. I've always been good at cooking, but I wasn't as big a fan of cooking as I was with baking, because baking is just so elaborate. It's so, what do you call this thing? It is decorative. It's so decorative. It's pretty. It's like the baby girl that I want, that I'm just going to make so cute and basically match her by putting all different kinds of cute outfits on her that are going to make me feel like, oh, look at my darling, right? Yeah, baking is like a cute baby girl that you dress. Like, you bake this thing in the oven and then you just decorate it. I love it, like with like a violent, and so I wanted to like grow from strength to strength. However, unfortunately for me, I never managed. All I can do is watch recipes and basically fantasize about experimenting with them on my own. But I can't really fully do that. So I had all these fantasies of like basically baking up a storm for the church, baking up a storm for my children, baking up a storm for everybody just loving the pastries that I cook. I was gonna make my kids fat, except not, because herein lies the other deal. I'm not just obsessed and fascinated with baking. I love nutrition. I love nutrition. But my adoration for nutrition also did not start until I lost. I do need to move to the next part now, right? And I want to piece in together to help you guys understand how ultimately the Lord fulfilled my desire for diagnostics. In other words, root cause analysis, to find the primary problem as to why a person got an issue, because of my my love for baking was also proliferated by my satisfaction for helping or serving people with something that I made with love, and they then take it and appreciate it. So it was going to ultimately, never mind it being just a baking business, but I was going to take my baked goods and give them for free, just like I did with the security guards, just like I did with the guy that left with my casseroles. I have always loved to bake for people. Like, yeah, there was this kid at Wits when I was still there that I used to give my baked goods to, who was struggling at home. Yeah, type establishment thing. He there was about maybe a year ago, he sent me an email and I responded to him because he still kind of remembered me and was like, thank you, I just wanted to let you know that I got a job, I got an internship at a company. And I was like, wow, congratulations, because he found me on YouTube and realized that I was still struggling and wanted to just kind of send a shout out on some. I finally broke out of my grain. And this young boy from Wits, he was like a first year student. I met him in the computer lab and we chatted about Jesus, and I used to send him pastries because he was struggling to eat, right? And for me, it blessed my heart so much that I was able to feed him with my baked goods. I would bake and I would give him these baked goods, and sometimes he would come to the library precisely because he hoped I would be there to give him food, right? To give him my baked goods. I eventually stopped being able to go to Wits because my student, was cut. My excess card no longer worked, so I stopped going, and plus I couldn't just continue to use that petrol traveling all the way there. So I don't really know what happened with him other than the fact that he had my email, but I felt blessed to do that. So my baking was going to get to a point where I would now bake like batches upon batches of whatever I'm baking, for the sake of YouTube. Like I would, for my YouTube channel, I would be using it as a tutorial to teach people how to make ABC, but I would make so much of it that I would then give like a whole, like basically just go with trays and buckets. Thankfully South Africa does not withhold the countrymen from giving food to the homeless. Like that stuff is a thing in America. America's going down. I'm just saying, guys, it's going down. I don't know why they have banned the giving of food to homeless people. I really don't know why the US does that, but anyway, whatever. Like, who else is gonna feed them? Anyway, whatever, moving on. I was gonna take trays and buckets of food and give them to people on the street. I was gonna be the lady that's always bringing us casseroles on Thursday at the orphanage, because I loved to bake so much that I would make a lot in abundance just for the sake of serving. So therein lies an ability to be able to serve a community. Therein lies the ability to be able to be a doctor, a nurse, somebody that is involved in biology for the people. Something that I loved, but that I would have also been able to help people in light of. And it would have also made me money, because I was going to ultimately monetize a YouTube channel that, what do you call this? For pastry, right? And you know how prolific the views on such videos can be, where you're just making a custard like Danish. You know how prolific the views can be, and the ad revenue would have enabled me to do other... Guys, let me move to the next part, because now I've been speaking for 1 hour 10 minutes just to basically help you to piece together this whole argument, and it all relating to a husband and a family and being Proverbs 31 and all that jazz. We're gonna piece it together ultimately, so please follow me along so we can reach a conclusion. All right.